international news now. Hong Kong is facing more mass demonstrations this weekend. It's been 10 weeks of confrontations between police and protesters there, which have thrown the famous city into chaos. Now, the situation is the biggest challenge for Chinese President Xi Jinping since he came to power in 2012. Now, our correspondent Bruce Harrison joins us now live from Hong Kong. Bruce, thanks so much for your time. What is the current situation in Hong Kong?
Well, right now I'm standing outside of Chater Garden, and tonight there is a large rally. Thousands of mostly students have gathered here, as you can see behind me, and they've filled this garden. And mainly tonight, their focus is to call on the U.S. and the U.K. to put greater pressure on China and support Hong Kong and its autonomy. Now, unlike previous demonstrations we've seen lately, this is a peaceful event here tonight. I've taken a walk by most of these demonstrators, and few seem to be wearing any kind of safety gear, whether a hard hat or a gas mask. The police presence is very limited. Just a few I saw making sure traffic was flowing and people weren't jeopardizing their safety because there are a lot of active roads around here. But once again, a peaceful event compared to some of the more aggressive demonstrations we have seen. There are more rallies planned for this weekend. It's unclear what could take place at those, though.
Now, the week started with those more aggressive pictures that you speak of, especially from the airport, where law enforcement used their heavy hand with protesters. They're refusing to move and bringing one of the busiest airports in the region to a near standstill. And we're hearing from state television out of China all of this week reporting about the fact that the China law enforcement authorities are going to continue with this heavy hand. What is the sense that you're getting now? It may be peaceful now. Is that set to continue?
Well, it just depends, really, because there are different approaches to these demonstrations. I'd say most of the events, if not all, start out peacefully, especially some of the larger marches we have seen in Hong Kong. And that's what's taken place tonight. These students aren't out here looking for trouble, especially the organizers behind these demonstrations. They want to send a peaceful message to other democracies, and you can hear them right now cheering loudly. But what we've seen over the weeks building up to this weekend were events that, as the night went on, descended into violence between police and demonstrators, and those that did clash with police were largely a limited amount of what I would say are the radical protesters, those that feel it is in their interest and the interest of Hong Kong to challenge the authorities head on. And so, to answer your question, will this peace last? It's hard to say. Because the demonstrators have no plans to back down, and because the Hong Kong government is not willing to give an inch in its positions and the demands of the demonstrators, and amid growing threats from Beijing, most people would suspect that there could be more violent clashes to come. Tonight, peaceful. Tomorrow, not necessarily.
Developments in Hong Kong have very much received international attention now. Of course, when you have President Donald Trump tweeting about it, then you know it's got international attention. This is a big challenge for Chinese President Xi Jinping, and he would be expected to approach this strategically, but would want to show the world that China is very much in charge. What are we hearing from a broader political point of view about the direction that he might choose?
Well, I certainly think it's a sensitive issue, and Xi Jinping has a lot at stake when it comes to whether or not to intervene in Hong Kong. And we've seen posturing at the border with troops and different armored vehicles and tanks as well. But he hasn't crossed that line yet. He hasn't sent those forces in here. And you mentioned President Donald Trump, who said just the other day that China certainly wants a trade deal with the U.S. because they're losing jobs to many non-tariff countries. But first, it should deal humanely with the situation here. So President Donald Trump, for the first time, bringing the trade war into this dispute and Hong Kong, between Beijing and Hong Kong. So a lot for the president up in Beijing to consider when it comes to his next move. I think for the time being, or at least up till now, there's been hope that the Hong Kong government could manage this on its own. But as the weeks roll on, it's becoming more clear that outside intervention, or at least in Beijing, they may believe that outside intervention is the necessary step. But it would not look good for the Chinese president to take any kind of physical action here in Hong Kong.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that update. Our correspondent Bruce Harrison coming to us live there from Hong Kong.